Welcome to April. Now, some people may think today is rather foolish. I think today's a good day because it means that we're almost to the end of the regular season, and so it's worth looking at the season that we've had so far while we're looking at the previews for each team. And we're gonna start things off with the potentially explosive matchup of the night. The last time Toronto went into New York, played the Islanders, Toronto got embarrassed. And Tavares took a lot of verbal abuse via the crowd, and the Islanders had a good time. I kind of expect a different response with Toronto tonight. Now, I'm not sure how this is going to work because Jake Muzzin not being in practice means one of the more physical Maple Leafs isn't going to be out there, and he likely doesn't play tonight, barring some other reason that he wouldn't have been in practice this morning. But for Toronto, this is kind of a pride game, and not only that, but the Islanders are ahead of them in the standings right now as well. So, there has to be some pride at work here. So it is the hate Tavares take two tonight, and we'll see how things work out. The Leafs lost their last game. The Islanders have won 2 in a row. So Toronto's still looking for consistency, and this is a bad time of year to be looking for some consistency. When you look at the records month by month, Toronto was 8-4 in October. They were 10-4 in November. So coming out of November, 16-8, or 18-8, I should say. Things look pretty darn good. Since then, however, things have been a lot tougher. 8-3-2 in December, 4-6 in January, 9-4-2 in February, and 6-5-3 in March, which means they lost more in March than they won. On the Islanders side of things, it's kind of been the opposite. They were 6-4-1 in October, 6-5-2 in November, 9-4-1 in December, 8-2-1 in January, 8-4-2 in February, and 9-7 this past month. So 16 games played in March. Busy months for them, and they're almost done their season. We'll see how things work out. Notable scorers: Austin Matthews has played 64 games, has 37 goals, 35 assists for 72 points. Good numbers. I think the problem is that there are people who still want to see him as generational and he's this absolute one of the greatest talents of all time. Just enjoy Matthews. Just enjoy him for what he is. Don't aspire for him to be generational. Just enjoy his evolution. If he gets there, great. But if he doesn't, that's not really a big deal either. He's still an excellent player. Morgan Riley, 20 goals, 50 assists for 70 points for him. Connor Brown stands out to me as a guy who I don't know. I mean, there are players who aren't going to be on this team next year for budget reasons. And Brown at 8 goals and 20 assists, could he be moved out for his level of play? And Jake Muzzin's played 29 games as a Maple Leaf, 5 goals, 11 assists in those 29 games. Doesn't sound like he's likely to play tonight. On the Islanders side of things, Barzal, 18 goals, 44 assists, 62 points. Stands out because his point totals have dropped from where they were in year one of his career, but he's still having a good year. Eberle, 18 goals, 18 assists. Filppula, 15 goals, 14 assists. And Johnny Boychuk, a guy that we don't really talk about anymore because his offense isn't where it was, but he's still a key guy for them on the blue line, 3 goals and 16 assists. Freddie Anderson will get the start. This is the longest break he's had since the bye week. And Robin Lehner is listed as likely for the New York Islanders. The battle in net really could go either way. Next up. All right, so the Capitals want first in their division. So they're going to be watching this game closely as they would have been watching what Pittsburgh and Carolina were doing against one another yesterday. And tonight, they're in against the Cats. So it's the Caps versus the Cats as you got the Panthers against the Capitals. It is 4 wins in a row that the Capitals have put together, whereas Florida's won 2 in a row. Their most recent win over Boston. So we'll see where things go for Florida this year. When you look at their tracks over the year, it's been an incredible march for Washington, both figuratively and literally. October, they were 5-3-2, didn't look very Stanley Cup-ish, but November, 10-4-1, 9-4 in December. They hit that massive poor January at 3-6-3. They were 9-4-1 in February this past month that just concluded last night. 11-3-1 in that month. So excellent month for Washington, and overall their season's been great. January's the one month where they look kind of pedestrian. Outside of that, it's all been pointing towards them not sucking for 2 years in a row. On the on the Florida side of things, in October they were 2-4-3, and that kind of sunk them. I got to be honest. You look at it, and you look at where Florida is and how far they are out. If they had a good start to the season, we might be looking at a completely different scenario. November they were 8-6-1, December 7-5-2, and then in January they had a rough month as well, 3-5-2. February 8-5-2, and March 7-7-2. But when you look at it overall, they didn't have very many losing months. They just didn't win enough when they needed to, which was at the start of the season and right around the All-Star break. Those were the two periods that really sunk them. Scorers of interest: Nick Backstrom, 21 goals, 52 assists for 73 points. 20 goals and 50 assists is the standard for Backstrom, and due to the fact he plays with some guy named Ovi, we don't talk a lot about him. Jacob Vrana, 23 goals, 23 assists. Lars Eller, 12 goals, 23 assists. Hagelin, in 17 games with the Capitals, 3 goals and 7 assists, 10 points. He's been reinvigorated since arriving with the Capitals. On the Florida side, Barkov is having a remarkable year. 34 goals, 57 assists for 91 points. Huberdeau, 27 goals, 61 assists for 88 points. So these guys have arrived. I don't think Barkov is underrated anymore. Sheahan, in 30 games with Florida, 2 goals and 8 assists for him. I don't see him being back in the fall. We'll see what happens. Dryden Hunt's worth mentioning. 29 games played, 3 goals and 6 assists. On the goaltending front, I would think Holtby. You might play Copley, though, because it is Florida. For Florida, I kind of get the feeling maybe Luongo plays out the string now, with the idea that he's probably done at the end of this year. It could go either way, though. But yeah, for me, the season Washington's had has been very, very impressive. And we don't really talk about it because the Islanders are this incredible story, and Toronto's always at the top of the news cycles. Whatever's going on with Boston and Tampa will get talked about as well. Washington kind of gets pushed down behind Pittsburgh as well, obviously. So we'll see how long that narrative continues, or if Washington pushes their way to the top of the headlines right around first week of June again. Next up, Rangers and Devils. So this is a matchup between two teams that are not making the playoffs. And how they got to not making the playoffs differs. The way that the Rangers have got here seems to be more cruel than the way the Devils got here, though the Rangers were expected to be here. Now, the Rangers have won 2 in a row. In their last game, New Jersey had a loss in overtime or shootout. I'm trying to remember which one. Again, with New Jersey, it was overtime with St. Louis. In the month of October, the Rangers start out slow, 4-7-1. November, 9-4-1, and that was an excellent month for them. December, 4-3-5. January, 5-7. February, 5-5-3. And the month we just completed, March, 4-8-3. On the Jersey side of things, in October, they were 5-3-1. They looked good coming out of the October month. And then November killed it, 4-8-3. December, 6-5-3. January, 4-8. February, 6-7-1. And March, 4-9-2. So last year we had New Jersey Devils versus everybody. This year we had New Jersey Devils versus the injured list, and the injured list won. Now, if they'd been 100% healthy, I think they still would have had issues making the playoffs, but it doesn't help. Notable scorers, Jimmy Vesey, who started off really, really well, has 17 goals and 18 assists. It's been basically an average year for him. Strome, since arriving with the Rangers, has played 59 games, 17 goals, 14 assists, 31 points for him. Nemesnikov, 10 goals and 18 assists for 28 points. Right around where you might expect him to be. I don't expect him to be back in a New York uniform next year. We'll see what happens, though. Brendan Lemieux, since arriving with the Rangers, 15 games played. 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points. And David Quinn has said Brendan Lemieux is a top 6 forward in the NHL. I don't necessarily disagree, but he's got to get that temper under control. The fact that every time he's on camera, he's yelling and screaming, he's got to get it under control. He can't just be yelling at the other team all the time. I think at this point, even his dad's saying, all right, now you got to slow it down a little. You got to pace yourself. On the New Jersey side of things, Zajac, 17 goals, 26 assists. Coleman, 22 goals, 13 assists. Butcher, 4 goals, 25 assists. Agostino, since getting to New Jersey, 24 games played, 4 goals and 8 assists for him. So I've been saying he's actually performing very well with New Jersey. Blackwood does get the start tonight for the Devils. On the Rangers side, I kind of expect Lundqvist. He's hit 20 wins very often in his career. It is a standard, and he's sitting at 18 currently. It would be a shame if he didn't hit 20 wins. Not entirely a surprise when you consider the season this team's had, but it would be too bad. That being said, moving along. Tampa. Tampa's in against Ottawa, so team number 1 versus team number 31. President's Trophy clinched. Last place overall, basically clinched, I believe, by Ottawa. I think they're 5 points back. I mean, technically they could move up, but why? It just so much effort. I'm just kidding. 4 games to go for Tampa. They've got 59 wins. So if they win all 4 games from here, they can break the record by the Detroit Red Wings. I get the feeling the way they've played over the last couple of weeks, that's not really a concern of theirs. And if a team looks like they're pacing themselves for the playoffs, or maybe facing a problem when it comes to being zeroed in on every game, Tampa. But we'll see what happens tonight with them against a team that is 60 points behind them. 60. Ottawa has 62 points. 2 Ottawas barely beat 1 Tampa. Tampa lost their last game and Ottawa won their last game. So the spread was much larger at different points. But anyways, we'll see how things work out. Now, when you look at this month by month, it's insane. The Tampa Bay Lightning were 8-2-1 in October, 10-5 in November, 13-0-1 in December, 6-4 in January, 12-1-2 in February, and 10-3 in March. So when you look at that, what it tells me is that my infamous power rankings have basically been Tampa and nobody else for months. And I don't really need a church. Show me that. I know. Tampa, I could basically have tattooed it to number 1 on that board, and it wouldn't have been a problem. On the Ottawa side of things, they were 4-5-2 in October, which was considered a good month. November, they were 7-7-1, and there was still some hope at that point that they'd at least have a respectable season. December, respectable, went out the window. 4-9-1. January, 4-5-1. February, 3-11. And this past month, 6-7-1 to try to bring up at least a little bit of hope for the future. And we'll see how things work out and if Mark Crawford's the one leading that team into the future next year. Notable scorers. Steven Stamkos, 41 goals, 52 assists. 93 points for Stamkos. Not bad. Killorn, 17 goals, 22 assists. Sergachev, 5 goals, 24 assists. Paquette has 12 goals and 4 assists for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tierney is a notable scorer for Ottawa. Only 9 goals, but 37 assists, 46 points. Ryan, 14 goals, 26 assists for 40 points. Not bad. I mean, his contract's still too much money, but he's had a decent season. Rudolph's Balsers, 33 games played, 5 goals, 7 assists. And Wolanin, 27 games played, 4 goals, 7 assists for him. Craig Anderson's been confirmed as the starter for Ottawa. I would imagine that Tampa goes with Domingue, but they may go with Vasi. Vasi hasn't played too much this year. Shouldn't really be a concern, but they may go with Domingue because it's Ottawa. We'll see. Tampa's in an unusual spot right now, where they've had nothing really to play for quite a while. So if the Detroit record is kind of, well, we're not going to get that anyways. That's the one thing left they might have been playing for. So we'll see. But anyways, I now need to change boards. Alrighty. So, Winnipeg. You excited, Jets fans? Are you nervous? I'd vote more with the nervous than with the excited right now. There's a real concern right now that with Winnipeg and their recent string of losses, and with the way St. Louis is playing, and with the fact that Nashville's still lurking around, Winnipeg may not have home ice in the first round. So they've lost 3 in a row, and they really need to win on the road now to win their division. And they haven't been great on the road this year. And they're in against Chicago. And Chicago, I would expect a little bit more of a fight from them than we saw with Philly yesterday. When you've got Taves, you've got Kane, and you've got this proud history, and their division rivals like this. And I know Flyers and Rangers, that's a division rival as well, but we'll see how things work out. I don't expect an easy game for the Jets at all. It's not like Chicago's going to throw in the towel and rest everybody. Just say, well, we're done anyways, so we're going to throw Scott Foster in the net again, because that was a good story last year, so we've got that. Overtime loss in the last game for Chicago. When you look at their records month by month, the month of October was 7-4-1. For the Jets, who liked that so much, they were 7-4-1 the month after as well. They were 11-4 in December, 8-4 in January, and then things kind of fall off the rails. February 4-6-2, and this past month only 8-7, and that's despite a really hot streak they had in the middle there, and they're only 8-7 on the month. On the Chicago side of things, they start out 6-4-3. There was a lot of optimism at that point. November killed it. They were 3-8-2. December 6-8-1. January 3-4-3, and then they start showing signs of life. February 9-4, and March 7-5-2. So when you look at it, over the last 2 months, Chicago's been 16-9-2, and Winnipeg's been 12-13-2. This is why I've been saying, like, those fast starts and getting off to a good start, that makes a huge difference. So later in the year, if you don't play very well, that's fine. And because you've already built up that record, people don't talk a whole lot about it. So the fact they've lost more than they've won over the last 2 months, have the Jets, that's fine. It's not a big deal. And in January, when I raised some alarms, and it's just, I think there's been a lot of sloppy play for Winnipeg. I still think they're a pretty darn good team, but a lot of sloppy play. Notable scorers, Patrick Laine, 30 goals, 20 assists, 50 points. Nice even numbers there. What is Patrick Laine worth? That's a big question that's going to have to get answered by Kevin Cheveldayoff this summer. Brandon Tanev, 14 goals, 14 assists. He's had a very good season. Hayes started out strong. He's sort of slowed down. He's got 16 games played as a Jet, 4 goals, 7 assists for 11 points. Beaulieu has been a bit of a story. 5 assists in 14 games for him. He's looked much better in Winnipeg than he did in Buffalo. On the Chicago side of things, Brendan Saad, 23 goals and 22 assists for 45 points. He's had himself an average season. Dylan Strome, since arriving in Chicago, 54 games played, 14 goals, 31 assists, 45 points. Brendan Perlini, 42 games played, 11 goals, 3 assists, 14 points. And Drake Caggiula, who since joining the Chicago Blackhawks has played 22 games, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points. And we'll see who plays for them tonight. I'm guessing it's Crawford. And I would think Hellebuck. I would think until they have a spot nailed down, Hellebuck's going to play a ton. Or until Brossoit is healthy again. Next up, Calgary. They have nothing to play for tonight. Let's be honest. If you're going to bet on an underdog tonight, the Kings might be a good one to bet on. The Flames can rest some guys tonight. It is back-to-back. There are going to be players who are hurting and banged up a bit. And they've clinched home ice throughout the entire West. They obviously can't catch Tampa for first overall. So there isn't really any motivation in this game to play your A roster other than maybe that's all that they know how to do. Maybe Bill Peters won't think of any other way to play it. Maybe he'll say, you know what, I'm playing the A roster because this is what got us here. They've won 2 in a row, whereas LA won their last game, but LA, of course, has been playing out the string for a while. Records over each month, 7-5-1 in October were the Flames. 8-4-1 in November, which is when they become a story. December 9-3-2. January 9-1-1. February 8-3-2. March they were 8-7. On the LA side of things, 3-7-1 in October, 6-9 in November, 7-5-2 in December when it looked like they might be coming back to life. Then January brought them back down to earth, 4-5-1. February 3-7-4, and this past month 6-7-1. So LA, it's been a couple of bad months, and just they haven't had a month they've had a winning record other than December. So there you go. On the notables list, Derek Ryan, 10 goals, 25 assists for Calgary. James Neal, 60 games played, 6 goals and 11 assists for him this year. I know there are numerous theories as to why his numbers have bottomed out the way they have, but it is alarming. Hathaway, 11 goals and 7 assists, and Hanifin, 5 goals and 28 assists. Tyler Toffoli has 13 goals and 20 assists for LA. Jeff Carter, 12 goals and 20 assists. Carl Grundstrom had goals in consecutive games after being called up. Has 4 goals currently in 11 games. And Matt Roy, 21 games played, 1 goal, 3 assists. I include them because with LA you're looking towards the future. And there are a couple of notable guys that they may be looking at with next season in mind. I would expect Riddick in this game, since Smith played last night. And for LA, they've been playing Quick a ton. That being said, Quick and Campbell have both been playing well. So regardless of who they play, I expect a good goaltending performance, especially if the Calgary Flames decide to rest some guys, which it's totally in their right to do so. You got to watch that though too, because if guys get out of sync, it's sort of like when you're coasting into the playoffs, or when you're backing into the playoffs. I hate when teams back in. I don't like it. Next up, Edmonton. All the Oilers play for now is pride. They did have a good March, so that's something. The problem is that with Edmonton, there have been numerous seasons where they missed the playoffs, and we've talked about how they finished strong. And so finishing strong is no longer something you can look at and say, well, yeah, it's been a crap season, but at least they finished strong because the Oilers have done this before. And they're in against Vegas, and Vegas is a curiosity. They did not look good in February. Then they acquire Mark Stone, and they look fantastic. Marc-Andre Fleury goes out first because his wife's having a baby, and then he's out with an injury. It's a lower body injury. They're being very evasive about it. So with Vegas, I have more than a little bit of concern. And we'll see how things go tonight. Now, Marc-Andre Fleury still isn't skating, is the latest report. So he's not on the ice. He's at the practice facility, but he's not skating, is the latest report. Oilers lost their last game, and of course, Vegas, their last game was an overtime loss against San Jose, and they've been losing for a while. But Malcolm Subban's been allowing roughly one bad goal per game. 1 goal per game that's either behind the goal line when it goes in, he deflects it in, or just one that you look at and you say, man, he's got to stop that. So, that's why, for me, I'm still saying, well, Vegas is playing well, but if Fleury's not 100% going into the playoffs, they're not going to last in the playoffs. You can't have a goalie who's allowing 1 bad goal a game and then say, well, we'll be fine. Take it from a Canucks fan that watched Cloutier. I love Dan Cloutier during the regular season, but man, during the playoffs. And it was usually injuries that did Cloutier, and that's what people don't remember, is that, Cloutier would play like crap in the playoffs, and that's all that the rest of the media would discover. And then in Vancouver, we would learn he was playing hurt. So hopefully Fleury doesn't come back before he's ready because of this stuff. When you look at records from October until now, the Oilers started out 6-4-1. There was a lot of good feelings then. Those turned 6-7-1 in November, a record they liked so much they repeated it in December. January they were 5-6, February 4-6-4, and March 7-5-2. So it's been this steady drop for the Oilers, which has made it feel worse because they started out okay, and then it was death by 1,000 cuts to their season. On the Vegas side of things, it's been just this is a team that I'm not sure what they are. They were 5-6-1 in October, then they're 9-6 in November. And people said, well, Nate Schmidt was out with the suspension. Once he came back, things got better, and they were right. December, they're 9-3-3. January, they're 6-4. Then in February, losing record, 5-7-1. But on trade deadline day, they get Stone. The month of March, they're 8-4-2. However, a lot of that 4-2 is at the end of the month. And so, what is Vegas right now? Not really sure, but Malcolm Subban will be starting tonight. On the notable scorers list, Darnell Nurse, 8 goals, 31 assists, 39 points. If there's anybody I can point to with Ken Hitchcock that has really benefited from him, it's Darnell Nurse. Cassian as well, 15 goals, 10 assists, 25 points. That's notable for him, a guy who kind of left on the scrap heap a long time ago. Lucic, 5 goals, 14 assists is notable because while Cassian's turned it around, Lucic really hasn't. Toby Reeder, 64 games played. He's got 11 assists. We're waiting on that goal, Toby. Everybody but Michael Scott believes in Toby. On the Vegas side, Cody Eakin has 21 goals, 18 assists. He's had a very, very good season. Ryan Reeves, 9 goals and 11 assists, 20 points. Pretty good for an enforcer. Stone in 16 games with Vegas, 4 goals and 6 assists, 10 points. And you can find Stone on the ice. He's the guy stealing the puck from everybody. So if you see Vegas steal the puck, it's going to be Stone. And Carrier, 53 games played, 8 goals and 1 assist. He reached those 8 goals halfway through the year. He's dealt with injuries and whatnot. He's still at 8 goals. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how this turns out tonight, only because I'm interested to see what happens with Vegas. And last but not least, Colorado. The Avs would have seen yesterday that Arizona won, which puts them kind of on the hot seat today as they go in against St. Louis. And St. Louis shouldn't have short memories. St. Louis should be looking and going, aha, last year you knocked us out on game 82 of the season. This year we can kind of help you guys get booted out of the playoffs too. And not only that, but they can help themselves get just that much closer to first should Winnipeg fail to win in Chicago. So it could be a very good night for St. Louis, a very frustrating one for Colorado, or vice versa. It could be a frustrating night for St. Louis and an excellent one for Colorado. The Blues are eyeing that first spot. Colorado's won their last 2, whereas St. Louis won their last game. Of course, they beat New Jersey. That was after losing to the Rangers. Doesn't tell you they're necessarily in peak form, but in this division right now, records are very, very close. Now, when you look at Colorado's record, it's not great, but it's good enough to be in the playoffs in the West. In October, they were 7-3-2. In November, 8-3-3. And of course, in November, they looked like they were going to be excellent. Then December, they were 4-7-3. January, 3-7. February, 6-4-4. The month we just finished, 8-5-1. On the St. Louis side, they're 3-4-3 in October. They're dead. 6-8 in November, 6-6-1 in December, and in January, they ended up being 7-4-1. But at a point in January, they were 31st overall. They were the last place team in the entire National Hockey League. And that was when everybody figured, well, they're going to be selling. The one thing that I always thought was that even when they were at the bottom and everything was just awful, they weren't that far out of the playoffs. I think the furthest they got out was maybe 6 points. Because the West was just, well, it's the West, right? So it's not as good as the East. So yeah, that 7-4-1 in January brought them back, and then February 12-1-1. March, a more normal 8-5-2 month, but they still have a shot at being first in the division. Now, scorers of note: McKinnon, 39 goals, 56 assists, 95 points. He's notable because last year we were all talking about him at this time of the year as you know, MVP and how great he is, and now it's kind of like, yeah, that's normal. And it's funny how 1 year later we're kind of looking, going, yeah, McKinnon, he's really good, but then we'll bring up other players that are playing better, at least in our eyes, right? Barry, 12 goals, 44 assists, 56 points. He's been having an amazing season himself. Brassard, since arriving in Colorado, 16 games, 4 goals, 0 assists. Gerard, 4 goals, 20 assists. He's been pretty darn solid for them this year. On the St. Louis side, Dunn stands out because his 12 goals, 22 assists. I didn't expect that kind of offense from him. Barbashev, 13 goals and 11 assists. It feels like there's a lot of untapped potential that hat trick showed is still there. Del Zotto, in 7 games with St. Louis, has 3 points. All of them are of the assist variety. And Robbie Fabry, who we'll see where this goes with him. 30 games, 2 goals, 3 assists for him. We'll see what kind of offers he gets with St. Louis this summer, where he fits into their lineup next year. Or does St. Louis look at the injury ravaged career of Robbie Fabry and say, with this team where it is and with some of the young guys we have, maybe we can look at moving Fabry and see what we can get back. And again, he has to show he can stay healthy first. I'm not sure that he has, but if he had a good run in the playoffs, does that mean he gets more money, gets a better spot in the lineup next year? It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. I didn't really speculate on the goalie with the Oilers. It'll be Koskinen. On Colorado's side, it'll be Grubauer. St. Louis, Bennington. Everybody's going to have their best goalies out there. And in Koskinen's case, they may go with Stolarz against Vegas, but I'm guessing Koskinen because he's played basically almost every game for a month and a half, 2 months now. So there you go. Let me know your picks in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through each tapping upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.